With update 14 for Payday 3 still more than 2 weeks away, colour me surprised when Starbreeze announced to partners that they were free to access the build early and create content specifically on the new Armour system we've all been waiting for. Now, months since its initial announcement, opinions regarding Armour 2.0 now range from this thing being a total damp squib, changing very little, to being the next coming of Bane and completely changing the fortunes of the franchise. As is so often the case, the truth is somewhere in the middle. Armour 2.0 is a very well implemented system, adding build depth that was desperately lacking with a surprising number of viable options. But at the same time, the passives are clunky, a lot of that depth is superficial if you want to min-max, and it hasn't really moved the needle in terms of game state. Regardless, it's still a system well worth diving into, so this video will be doing exactly that. Walking you through how these new frames and plate types function, as well as discussing the best combinations to run from my initial testing. I've discovered 5 top armor setups I foresee ruling the meta for months to come, so stick around for the reveal of those to head into update 14 fully prepared. Oh, and as an aside, although it's not the focus of this video, the game more generally has seen sweeping balance changes in this update. Higher difficulties now allow for a greater number of enemy and special unit spawns, snipers actually shoot at us, and the intervals between which you can take damage have been lowered, meaning it'll feel as if the enemies have stormtrooper aim less frequently. This means the cops have finally received the buffs they need to start competing, and with massive ammo pickup nerfs across the board also impacting the effectiveness of ammo funnel, ironically, the overall balance of difficulty has shifted in a somewhat positive direction, but the player is still leagues stronger than the AI, and Armour 2.0 has added even more ways to effectively never die. Let's find out how, shall we? Okay, let's start by talking about the frame system itself. Instead of just equipping armor from the old menu, you will now be able to purchase 4 separate armor frames from the store, all of which have independently customizable plates. The core differences in each are their total plate capacity, base speed potential, total ammo capacity, consumable slots, and fixed passive ability. The more plates your armor can take, the slower you'll move, but also the more ammo you'll be able to carry, at the expense of consumable slots. Also, keep in mind you can't run fewer plates than their total capacity, so 0 plate builds will not exist, and the passives are effectively locked into the number of plates, which I think is a slightly clumsy implementation. Speaking of those passives, for the 1 plate medtech frame, your uses of first aid kits will heal a bonus 40 health points, taking them to a total of 65. The 2 plate specialist frame provides you with 1 additional tool in your starting loadout, which stacks with the extra pocket skill. The 3 plate Saboteur frame will replenish a single throwable every 15 seconds, so long as you have none in reserve, whilst the 4 plate mercenary frame restores 3 points of trauma damage every time you pick up a kill. I think the mercenary frame is the best example of the passives just feeling oddly tacked onto the frames without implicit synergy. I actually like the regen effect. In fact, it was something I personally suggested in testing. But the reality that it only combats trauma damage means it only works with the blue resistant plates, making the passive useless if you want to explore 2/3 of the new Armour 2.0 system. I think giving us some passive flexibility would be a nice touch. Moving on from the frames, which are tough to judge independently, we need to discuss the new plate system. Now, instead of choosing a flat armor type, be it adaptive or standard, we get to pick between 3 distinct plate options and choose the order in which they'll be protecting us from damage, massively opening up the scope for unique combinations, especially for those 3 or 4 plate builds. The 3 variations are resistant, the original Payday 3 armor, which grants a massive 60% damage reduction now in exchange for taking trauma damage, which is permanent damage that can only be reversed through certain interactions. Even better, these plates don't reduce the number of times you can go down on a heist, and regenerate the quickest at 1 second per plate. For reference, compared to their old Update 13 counterparts, these things have double the damage resistance and recharge 0.5 seconds quicker per plate, with no tangible downside. Quietly, they might just be the best armor option in the game now, although I know with trauma still being a thing, they won't be the most popular. Next up, we have the adaptive bright green plates. The all-purple adaptive armor added 6 months into Payday 3's lifespan. These now grant 30% damage reduction and do not take trauma damage, meaning they can fully regenerate so long as they aren't completely broken. They reduce your max downs by 1 per plate and regenerate in 1.5 seconds. Like the resistant plates, these things got much better thanks to Armour 2.0, gaining 25% damage reduction and regenerating a whopping 3 seconds faster if you run just a single plate. For those who know how synergistic these things are with the skill Plate Up, you'll already have an idea of just how strong this playstyle now is. But all those buffs to the alternate armor types were made in an attempt to balance them around the return of the almighty Payday 2 armor, now known as the Impact Plate. This armor type will always regen back to full efficacy, regardless of it breaking, but in exchange it has the longest regen time of 3 seconds per plate and offers 0 damage reduction, taking the same amount of punishment your health bar would. It also reduces your max downs by 1 like Adaptive does. Whilst that sounds like a small trade-off for endless regeneration, those 3 seconds can really add up, capping in a max 12-second wait time to regen with 4 loaded into your mercenary frame. Additionally, this armor plate doesn't work with key skills like Hardy or Plate Up, meaning no endless armor and invincibility. However, it does interact strangely with armor repair kits, enabling you to return to full armor in just the click of a button, meaning it still has a place in many of the game's top setups. It's also the lowest maintenance option of all 3 plate types, so if you just want a fire and forget armor type without any of that trademark Payday 3 micromanagement, this should be the default option for you. So that's all of Armour 2.0's individual components explained. Now let's put them together to craft the best possible setups. Essentially, the way this is done is via a new menu within the Armour Select screen, enabling you to choose the type and order of which plate will take damage first, from right to left. As a rule of thumb, due to how easy to replenish they are and how skills like Clean Slate work, you want your impact armor to be on the outside, soaking up damage first, whilst resistant plates act as your last line of defense. That doesn't have to be a hard and fast rule though, as there are some builds where you want a specific frame passive, but as little recharge penalty on your final place as possible, meaning you want to fill the build out with resistant armor, even if you intend to leave it destroyed. Now, what you really want to know are the combinations that effectively break the game and will likely form the core meta over the next several months. Fortunately, I've tested the most viable combinations and come away with a top 5, which I'll now walk you through frame by frame. Starting with the single plate medtech, first equipped with impact plates. This is probably the closest you can get to a Payday 2 standard armor build. No real skill interactions or gimmicks aside from tank reducing your recharge time to 2.4 seconds. Nothing specific to think about in your gameplay, just a fast-paced, damage-focused setup that feels like taking a step back in time when you play it. You will want to combine this with health skills in the Assassin and Fortitude tree, as you'll be taking a fair bit of direct damage with this one, but that's sort of the plan anyway, as your core armor just steps in from time to time to mitigate those wounds. With massive buffs to Assassin's Metal, granting 30 health instead of 10 once below 75% total HP rather than 50, you should have very few problems staying passively topped up, meaning if you really do want to lean into a pure health setup, this has got to be the way to do it. Those passive first aid buffs make this even more apparent, giving you additional get out of jail free tools, and its solid matchup into the buff snipers makes this one a little more alluring for heists like Boys in Blue or 99 Boxers. It does have one glaring weakness up against bulldozers who can run you over without hardy immunity to tank them up, but that's still enough to land it at 4th on my top 5 list. Next up, let's stick with medtech but instead discuss the resistant plate, which for me was the surprise package as far as this update is concerned. Those resistance buffs are huge, meaning just a single plate can easily tank up multiple high damage shotgun cops and then fully regenerate 90% of that damage thanks to just a 1 second recharge time, making Plate Up a luxury skill you don't even need to invest in. This makes it much harder for trauma damage to build up, meaning this plate type's greatest weakness feels barely present most of the time. With a whopping 5 downs at your disposal, this is also an amazing health and fortitude build facilitator, and with a max of 6 potential armor repair kits in your pocket at a time, you'll also never be short of protection. Snipers will cause you problems, but access to Hardy mitigates that impact. Like all one-frame setups, this benefits from the huge assassin buffs, and that neutral to positive matchup versus bulldozers means it surprisingly just about edges its impact plate cousin, landing at 3rd place. Just keep in mind, you'll need to build up a store of ARKs before the fun really begins. Lastly, I think all 3 one-plate medtech setups have viability, but to me, Adaptive takes the cake. It has all the positives of Resistant and some of its drawbacks, but the fact it takes 0 trauma damage in exchange for a single down and a 0.5 second longer recharge time feels like more than a solid enough trade-off. That 30% damage resistance is massive for the survivability of adaptive plates, and between plate up restoration and its improved natural regen, you're going to be very hard to break down. In truth, when I played with the old 2-plate adaptive, I only ever cared about the second and final plate in order to access Assassin, so for all the benefits you get for running it this way, including the superior regen time, extra downs and resistance, they've essentially taken my favourite way to play and made it more than twice as powerful. For evidence, in this entire No Rest for the Wicked playthrough you're watching, the cops only broke through twice, thanks to dozers who failed to deal any actual health damage before going down. I'm so confident in the defensive prowess of this setup, I don't even feel the need to bring extra resources. Also, I've yet to find the reduced ammo capacity of the 1-plate frame make a tangible difference despite the reworked economy. I may be a little biased because these kill to survive playstyles reminiscent of Anarchist from Payday 2 will always get my vote, but I believe there's still a better setup out there, meaning the 1-plate adaptive comes in at second place on my tier list. Moving on to the 2-plate specialist frame, fundamentally I don't see why you'd use this in Loud when there are so many other powerful options. The burden of having to bring an extra plate, increasing your recharge timer whilst also locking you out of Assassin's Metal, never feels particularly worth it. The only real niche it fills is in a marking build, giving you access to a max of 3 separate trip lasers, enabling you to effectively cordon off an entire section of a heist and mark everything within it. It works fine and can save you a few skill points in Assassin, but it'll cost you just as many in Hacker to make properly work. I paired this with 1 plate of adaptive armor and 1 plate resistant, basically there as a filler to get down to 1 plate quickly. It was a totally viable if slightly gimmicky build, although for power creep reference, it is still strictly better than the original version of adaptive armor. Also, in Specialist's favour, it definitely has a niche in stealth, as the extra ECM it offers means one more tool to shut down cams, completely trivialising certain heists and functioning as a nice little addition to anyone's stealth toolbelt. 3-plate Saboteur on the other hand, whilst still just as gimmicky, is very powerful, almost entirely thanks to its passive ability. Regenerating a throwable every 15 seconds doesn't sound like much use with skills like Scavenger in the game, and it wouldn't be if we didn't have access to smoke grenades. These things reduce enemy accuracy by 70% so long as the smoke breaks their line of sight, and they happen to last for just under 15 seconds, meaning you can effectively chain these into each other. In other words, providing an endless field of effective damage reduction, not only for you, but also your teammates. Paired with skills like Death Knell, Tactician Ace, and Discombobulate, this can get a little crazy. Of course, it comes with the downside of kinda bastardizing gameplay, as you'll end up more focused on chucking smokes than actually playing the game, and teammates might not fully appreciate the favour you're doing them as their own visibility is hindered, but you really can't argue with the results. As far as the plates I like to run with this are concerned, I've been testing a resistant into adaptive and finally impact plate setup alongside an armor bag, with the idea being that I end up with a bit of a super adaptive plate that's half shielded by the impact one, whilst the resistant plate is just there to avoid hampering my recharge time too heavily. I might be overthinking this one to be honest, and an adaptive double resistant setup might work better, but it's all reasonably moot because the smoke grenades are what truly contribute to your survivability with this frame. In reflection, watching back the gameplay, I might actually be underrating this when I place it at 5th on my overall tier list. It's just my personal preference to avoid playing around gimmicks wherever possible, which selfishly drags it down. That means my tier 1 armor setup is surprisingly a 4-plate creation using the Mercenary frame. I tried this in a number of different ways before concluding on the definitive approach. I tried a mega adaptive build with 3 resistant plates and 1 adaptive, which just felt like more trouble than it was worth as I struggled to top up any time the adaptive plate broke. I tried something similar with 3 plates of resistant and 1 plate impact, which also performed below par. The idea was to somewhat protect those resistant plates, giving me a chance to activate the trauma regen passive, but spike damage snipers made that a lot less effective than I'd hoped. I even tried the holy grail 4-plate impact armor with that massive 12-second recharge timer brought down to 9.6 with skills. This was solid, although every time I lapsed concentration 8 seconds into avoiding damage and found myself back at square one, I was left frustrated. What did work rather too well though was being able to fully regenerate all 4 plates simultaneously upon armor repair kit use, even without clean slate, giving you a rolling set of 4-plate armor so long as you still have kits to spare. This is probably not how it should work, but it does, so with that in mind, how can we make it even stronger? Well, that's fairly straightforward. Simply replace the first impact plate with a resistant one and add clean slate to your build. This means you can still effectively restore all 4 plates in just the push of a button, but you'll also benefit from a 2-second faster recharge time, 60% damage reduction into that last plate, and gain access to Hardy, meaning your matchup into dozers is much more favourable. Even better, with 3 impact plates to effectively protect it, you can keep knocking off any trauma damage dealt to your final plate thanks to the passive, which really isn't a bad source of regen when all's said and done. Snipers shouldn't massively bother you thanks to the impact plates, and with 3 doses on the map right now on overkill difficulty, you won't be short of kits to go around. Without a doubt, in my mind, this is the best armor frame and plate combo in the game. The cops simply don't have the DPS to break through 4 plates over and over again, and to be honest, if you play sensibly with this setup, you won't even need to rely on the power of ARKs to stay afloat. I still enjoy 1-plate adaptive a little more, just for how much it incentivizes fast and aggressive play, but if I'm being as objective as possible until someone discovers something even more broken, I don't think it gets much better than this. And that concludes my complete overview of Armour 2.0 and how you can get in and break it from the 26th of May. Overall, I am impressed by how the feature has been implemented. The UI elements for it are far more polished than I anticipated, making it much more natural to interface with. There's a lot of fun and viable options out there already, and I think it was smart pairing this power leap for the heisters with something at least close to equivalent for the cops. More on the substance of those background updates in the actual update video. There's a lot to take in with passive ammo funnel and cop density changes that might be a little divisive. I hope you guys enjoyed this insight into the update. Let us know if you did. This is obviously a very different approach from the guys at Starbreeze, giving us more content freedom. But of course, feel free to get involved in the build and theory crafting down in the comments from what you've seen. I'm quite excited for how patch day is going to turn out. Take care, do me a massive favour if you can by liking, subscribing, and maybe even checking out my Apex Gaming PCs link from down in the description if you're in the market for a new custom built machine. And finally, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all very soon in the next video. A huge thank you to my dedicated Patreon backers. If you want to join this crew in going infamous, check out the link below and pledge as little as $2 to see your name in the credits, or get 24-hour early access to future videos and vote on upcoming content. Take care, I'll see you all soon.